Hey there. I recently had a subscriber to my channel ask me about what do I know about Southeastern Asian mythology. And I felt a little bad. I said, I don't really know that much about Southeastern Asian mythology. Years ago, when I spent most of my time back in the 80s and 90s combing so many bookstores looking for books on mythology, there really wasn't that much on Southeastern Asian mythology. In back in the 80s and early 90s, there was no internet. Today, I'm sure you could find a ton of stuff on the internet on the subject. And the mid to late 90s, the internet was around while I was still reading a lot of this stuff and book hunting. But the internet kind of sucked at that time, so there really wasn't that much you could look for. Uh, in terms of books, I have come across a few. Very, very few. There's probably more out there. I haven't looked recently. I've actually haven't been I've been a little rusty lately on my mythology reading. Um, but before I mention the few books I have found and relate to you a few of the interesting stories that you'll find in this area is where is Southeastern Asia anyway? And what countries do they consist of? Well, basically, in between India and China, there's this little peninsula called Indochina. And in there's several countries. They include Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, and a few others. And that is one part of Southeastern Asia, those countries. And then you have further south, you have other countries that consist of many islands. So you have Malaysia, the Philippines, and Indonesia. So there's other countries as well, but these are the countries we're talking about when we talk about Southeastern Asia. One book that I came across quite a few years ago was this very interesting little book that was very nice. It was called Asian Pacific Folktales and Legends. I'm going to have the titles below. And this book is edited by Jeannette Faurot. Unfortunately, this doesn't just focus on Southeastern Asia. It actually, because it's Asian Pacific, it's a big area. It includes stories from Korea, from China, from Japan, but it also has some stories from Thailand, the Philippines. Um I think I think there's a few from Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. So it's got a few from Southeast Asia, and then several years later, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I'm not sure. Not that long ago, I came across this very interesting book. It's called The Dragon Prince: Stories and Legends from Vietnam. So this book is really just on Vietnam, and it's pretty kind of cool to have one whole book just on Vietnam. It's written by Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Here's his picture in the back. He looks familiar, doesn't he? I've seen him before. I think he's a big author, and he's involved in world peace and stuff like that. So he wrote this book. I don't know if he translated from. It's been a while since I read the intro. I don't know if it's a direct translation from stories or it's in his own writing. I'm not sure. Apart from these two books, I have this really great. I bought this quite a few years ago, maybe 20 years ago. It's a reference book actually. It's world mythology, by the general editor is Roy Willis, and this book really, I feasted on this. I mean, I know it's a big book and it has mythologies from all over the world and it's meant to be a reference book, but I liked it so much that I read it completely. And to my surprise, the very, very last chapter is on Southeastern Asia. It's not a very big chapter, but at the time, considering the dearth of books out there that I could find, it was a welcome change. And I actually learned a little bit about Southeastern Asian myths. And I'm going to talk about at least one story today. So I wouldn't say buy this whole book just for that one chapter. But if you want an overall general great book on world mythology that is not too dense and you could actually read completely, even though it's kind of big, This is actually a pretty cool book. I have other reference works too, which are too long and dense to really read the whole thing. But if you want one that you could actually read all the way through, this is not as thick as it seems. There's a lot of illustrations, and the writing is not too tiny, and this is Peruvian mythology. Okay, so I'll tell a few stories briefly that I kind of found interesting. From the Philippines, there's a story of King Soliman and his daughter Solomia, and this story is about this king in the Philippines, in Manila, who kept the Spanish intrusions at bay, and guarded the Philippines, guarded Manila from outside invaders. And he had this beautiful daughter named Solomia, and she was one day bathing and came across this fisherman who happened to be fishing nearby, who came upon her accidentally, and when their eyes met, he promised her, oh, I'm not a peeping Tom. I just happened to be fishing here, and I didn't know you were going to be bathing. And so, the two of them fell in love very quickly. But it turns out that this fisherman is no regular fisherman. He's actually royalty, and he was the son of a rival chieftain to her father. So the king got really mad and captured the young prince, the prince that was fishing, and said he's going to drown him. He's going to put him in a sack, and he's going to weight it and throw it in the river. So he has the poor young man sent to the dungeon in the sack, and he already put him in he couldn't wait to put him in the sack. He threw him in the sack already while he's in the dungeon. And meanwhile, Solomia goes down and kind of sneaks into the dungeon and starts having an argument with the prince. She says, trade places with me. I can't live without you. Get out of the sack and I'll go in the sack. And he's like, are you crazy? I'm not letting you in the sack. I'd rather drown. So she's like, well, okay, there's only one thing we can do. I'm going to get in the sack with you. So the two of them held each other all night in the sack. So gives new meaning to the term in the sack. So the next day, the sack is lifted up and thrown into the river, and they sink to the bottom, and the king goes around and starts looking for his daughter and realizes that she's gone, and the horrible idea came to him that she'd do something crazy. And he had the sack immediately lifted up from the river, found the two lovers drowned inside, and he came to the conclusion that when it comes to true love, nobody could stand in the way. You kind of have to let love take its course. That's the power of love is something you see in a lot of these stories. But being that they couldn't be together in life, the king made sure that they were together in death. So he put the two together in the same burial area and built a magnificent area around it. And supposedly they're there to this day. The next story is from Thailand. I found, let's see, Vietnam. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna do this one. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna do the Thailand episode. If I have time, I'll go back to it. But the Philippines story is from the book. This book here that's got a mixture of a lot of different stories. The second story. I don't want this video to get too long. The second story is from this one. It's from Vietnam, and it's called the Pine Gate. A gate made out of pine wood. Turns out there was this monk, this holy man, who was serving under a master, and he wanted to leave this area that he studied, and he wanted to go off into the world and try and teach people what he learned in the mountain with the holy man, and he's a swordsman. So not only was he known about religion and wisdom and philosophy, he was a swordsman. And he wanted to go off in the world, and the master says to him, make sure that you learn the difference between good and evil, you alleviate evil, you alleviate suffering, you avoid evil, you make people happier with what you know, and you show people the way. And an interesting thing is the way is capitalized in this story, which I'm thinking, okay, what kind of master is this? What kind is this a Buddhist, or is this Taoist? Usually when I think of the way, you think of Taoism. And the guy who wrote this book is a Buddhist, so I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's elements of Taoism in the story. I'm not sure. The book is not really annotated and anything. But he also tells them to teach people to get attainment. So again, when you think of attainment, you think of enlightenment and you think of Buddhism. So anyway, sorry, my cat's making noise. So he goes off in the world, and not only did he have a powerful sword, but the master gave him the special jewel that if he has a suspicion that some holy person he meets, or some person who supposedly seems really good that he meets, but he's got a real weird suspicion, hold up the pearl and look inside the pearl and see the person's reflection in there, and it'll show the person's true character. So the person, so the swordsman goes off, and he comes across these various people who claim to be doing good works, but he holds up, there was this one person who claimed to be a holy man. He holds up the pearl next to him, and he sees this huge demon with fangs and a horn coming out of his head and eyes that were glowing. And he fought the demon, and the demon begged for his life. And he said, okay, go off from where you came from and do no wrong. And if you're lucky, you'll be reincarnated as a human one day. Okay. Reincarnation we hear here. Okay, so shades of Buddhism here now. And then he comes across these two women who were playing musical instruments and singing and selling books and beautiful paintings, not photographs, beautiful paintings. And again, he had a suspicion about them, and he held up the jewel, and sure enough, they were these two hideous serpents that attacked them. So he pulled out their fangs with his sword and basically told them to get lost. He does this for several years, but then he strangely gets lazy. He doesn't have the urge to use the jewel anymore. He doesn't seem to care that much on who's a real human and who's a demon, and this kind of really bothers him. And he decides to, after 7 years of wandering, he decides to go back to his master and figure out why what's gotten into him. Why doesn't he have that zeal that he had before? And so he goes back to the mountain where he served the master, and he tried to get through the gate, and strangely the gate was locked, and no matter how much he tried to push it open, he couldn't get it open, and then he tried to whack it with his sword and couldn't open. It was almost held by supernatural forces, and he couldn't get through it. So he stayed the whole night, and he waited for one of his fellow students, one of his fellow brothers that were serving the master, to come down the mountain to let him in the gate. And eventually he comes across somebody else that served the master, and the younger man recognized the swordsman and said, "Oh, you've come back to us, great." And he goes, "Yeah, I haven't been able to get through this gate. It's locked." And the guy's like, "No, it's not locked, and it's not that sturdy either. I'm surprised." That means the master, usually when the gate's like this strong and you can't get through it, it means he's warding off people that he doesn't want around, which is a bad sign. Why would this work against the swordsman who serves the master? So, anyway, the two of them go down and get a drink of water, and the younger brother says to him, "Oh, by the way, do you still have that jewel that you could see people's true nature?" And he goes, "Yeah, I got it right here." And he pulled it out, and the two of them look in it, and lo and behold, the swordsman, instead of seeing himself in the jewel, he sees this demon. And he gets so horrified and shocked that why is he a demon, that he faints, and all of his energy drains from him, and he doesn't even have the power to walk, and he doesn't know why this happens. but the other monk, the younger man, said to him, "It's okay, it's okay. We'll figure this out. The master has great compassion for you. We'll learn together and work together." And he helped lift him up, and the two of them went up the mountain, back up to the master. And then, strangely, the story just ends. And I thought it ended on a bit of an enigma. I was like, well, gee, that's really odd. I mean, why was the swordsman a demon? I mean, didn't he kind of, was he an evil demon originally, and he repented, and he decided to learn good qualities from this master? In that case, how come he didn't remember that? Did he become a demon? Did he become demonic, or because he developed a type of laziness that he didn't want to use his jewel after several years of using it? I don't know. It's one of those strange stories that I don't know the answer to, and I don't have I don't have a Thich here to ask. The last thing I'm going to tell you is it's not really much of a story. It's just something about Indonesia. I'm gonna go to Indonesia now, and I just want to mention these two characters that are. This is about magical battles. There's the people of Indonesia, Bali to be specific. Bali is an island of Indonesia, and they're very Hindu, and they have this. They talk of this witch called Rangda, and she's this really horrible witch that she's very powerful, and it's believed that she was based on a real person that used sorcery to make people very, very ill a long time ago, until her powers were defeated by a superior holy person, it's still believed that this Rangda character lives on, that's based on this person that once lived, and she is constantly doing magical battles with this hero named Barong, and so Barong is the spirit of good that constantly is fighting against Rangda. I thought I mentioned these characters because I have some representations here of Barong, like Barong here. This is Barong, and this is actually a bag, and this is Barong, and it even says Barong Bali. And this is the image of Barong. This bag was given to me by a friend who's actually Indonesian. She traveled to her homeland and brought back this as a souvenir, so I thought it was pretty cool. So this is what Barong looks like. He's kind of fierce, but I guess he has to be if he's got to fight evil. And I also have Rangda here, and this is Rangda. She's pretty horrifying, isn't she? She's noted for having this long hair and this grisly appearance. And I actually bought this in Union Square a few years ago, and I keep her locked up in the spare bedroom so she doesn't come after me at night. Anyway, so this is a representation of Rangda, the witch, the powerful sorceress. And that's it. Okay, so anyway, so that's it. So that's it for this video. And until next time.